why why are people upset about Brian Pepin stepping down after 2 years? I mean, uh, I think people would love to feel like when someone is is entrusted to be a public servant to sit on city council, they're there for the commitment of 4 years. To find somebody who steps down after 2 years, and not because there's a family emergency or they need to move for work or whatever, but simply because there's more money from his political consulting job, I think is disappointing to a lot of people in this community.
Yeah, it is. And I remember when Brian Pepin ran, we knew he had political aspirations, with his background in the local Republican Party and the Lincoln Club. But when he ran for office, he was like Mr. Poway guy, family guy, raising my family here. And it's weird that a person would be that invested in Poway and this seat and then hit the eject button after half a term.
Yeah, hard to say, kind of what's really going on there behind the scenes. But what this sets up is, of course, this question of how do we fill this gap on city council? And um, the city council has in recent years deferred to appointments constantly. This would be, I think, the fourth appointment under Voss himself, if they make an appointment.
Yeah, I mean, pull your microphone a little bit closer if you could.
Yeah,
there we go. Yeah, there have been a lot of appointments.
Right. And I think that also, worries a lot of people who are watching Poway politics and saying, okay, yet another appointment. There's 2 more years left on this term. So, the residents of District 1 voted for one representative. That representative is leaving. Why should they not have a say in who that replacement is for the next 2 years? Why should the city council, several members of the city council, get to decide who their representative is going to be? I can see and feel and hear that concern and that upset. And, sure enough, right before the last city council meeting, there were roughly 60 pages of emails sent to the city council.
60 pages?
Yeah, in 2 different batches from residents, throughout the city, that were almost all saying, we would like a special election. We want to pick our replacement representative. This is democracy. And at that city council meeting, the city council members dismissed that, almost within minutes, and said, no, we're going to appoint anyway. And so, here we are with yet another appointment process taking place.
Yeah, the history, what it was, Jim Cunningham was replaced by Kalen Frank, I think, right?
That's right. Yeah. I believe Voss originally appointed Barry Leonard. Voss and the city council members appointed Barry Leonard to fill in Voss's council seat.
Yes,
years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was almost a decade ago. And then, Kalen Frank, who had only lived here for 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
and that was controversial. A number of applicants who had been involved in city politics and had lived in Poway for years and had relationships were turned down for that. And then District 2, we had Anita Edmondson was chosen after Dave Grush stepped down as well recently. So this would be number 4.
There's some interesting storylines here with the appointment process. Like on one level, there is the how should I say, the pattern, right? And is this just coincidence that people seem to be resigning midterm, or is it a strategic calculation to continue an appointment process rather than a democratic vote? And that maybe some strings are being pulled for the timing, because when Brian Pepin resigned, it was just conveniently right after we had an election.
Yeah.
Imagine if we could have had the vote in November of 2024.
Right. Absolutely. And not only that, but, with Pepin's resignation, had it been just a little bit earlier, the city would have had to do a special election. But, he passed a certain threshold where it kind of goes up to, an option that the city council has is to appoint or do a special election. So, again, you kind of wonder, okay, well, was it timed to close out the requirement to do a special election, and to close off the fact that we already had ballots going out in November? Maybe we could have had that name on the ballot, or that race on the ballot. I think it's hard to know the intent
Mhm.
of people behind the scenes, but I think it's how the city council reacts that matters, right? You know, do they react in a way that gives voters a say in their government and in their local government? And what we're seeing is no. You know, we're seeing, you know, at this most recent city council meeting, not a lot of great reasons provided as to why they immediately went to special election, other than, you know, kind of Occam's razor tells you, as I said before, Voss and kind of the establishment representatives on council are seeing a chance that the majority could slip, you know, could vanish if you know, if you have Tony Blaine and Jenny Maida, who have kind of both publicly vowed to oppose a lot of what, you know, Voss and other city council members have put in place over the last few years, and then that, you know, a third seat maybe gets you know, somebody else in office, we very well could see some serious changes in the
I
city
mean,
of Poway.
that's mind blowing. I mean, since I've been in Poway since 1996, and there's been sort of a, you know, they've called it like the old Poway Guard, or, you know, there's like a certain group of leadership here that kind of each generation sort of follows the next
Right.
with the same general philosophy and point of view on many, but not all things. So to see that Mayor Voss might be in a minority on the city council, I mean, that would be crazy
Yeah,
in Poway
yeah,
terms.
yeah. I mean, I think it's a sign of just you know, the discontent among voters. You know, like I said, has reached a tipping point. And you know, there was right before the election a leak of an audio recording of a, you know, executive session of city council,
I heard that.
which, you know, I think the session was about, may have taken place 2 years ago, but it was before really anybody in the city knew about the proposed lifetime fitness center that was proposed for the farm. And, you know, in this recording, it sounds like somebody at city staff just left the audio track or the video track on when they should have cut it off. You know, when the city council went to executive session, that track should have been cut off, but it was still being broadcast. So it doesn't sound like this was a, you know, a deliberate leak by some employee. This just
No,
sounds
no,
like
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
um,
It's just a mistake.
but you know, if you go and look at the transcript or you listen to the audio, I mean, you hear the city council being, you know, dismissive of residents. You know, there's a quote from Mayor Voss saying, you know, I don't give a shit about, you know, and he names off a resident. Um, I don't think people want to see their city council members, you know that that's what the city council members are saying about them behind closed doors. I think
Yeah.
that turned off the people who did hear that audio. I think it turned them off pretty immediately. And so that's just one in a long string of things that people have felt. It made them feel like the council is not operating in their best interest, is dismissive of them, maybe condescending, feels like they know best. And so, you know, seeing another special election where the council's saying, yeah, we know best for, you know, who should represent you. We'll take care of it. Listen to us, trust us. I think there's a lot of pushback on this.
You know, it's interesting is since first of all, do you like the whole idea of districts in Poway?
I do. I do. I think, you know, different parts of Poway, just like, you know, any city or region, tend to have certain characteristics, right? You know, people in North Poway just have, you know, differences in where they shop, the direction that they leave town, right? A lot of
Yeah.
people go to Rancho Bernardo, right? And that's where they do their business versus South Poway, you know. So I do think that the grouping people together in that way and giving them a chance to advocate for their region is not a bad thing. And I think that, uh, you know, you can, unfortunately, like if you don't have those districts, you can dilute minority voters pretty easily.
Mhm.
Not that Poway has a very large, you know, sizable minority, but you know, I think districts is the right direction for us to be moving in. It was the right decision to be in.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. And it does. It seems like that there were, let's just say, racial identity groups that were part of the idea for having the district, creation, and that was the legal battle. But yeah, not as challenging here in Poway on that point. But it is interesting that the whole idea of having a council, a district, and having your own representative is that the people vote for that person. But wouldn't it be odd that if the other 4 city council members, none of which lived in District 1, were the ones choosing the representative for District 1?
Right. So, I mentioned, like, at this most recent city council meeting, there was some explanations put out there for why the city council was going towards appointment. But, to my ears, none of them felt genuine or logical, right? I mean, I think one of them being, well, a special, a mail-in special election. This was actually not said at the city council meeting, but through subsequent emails, Mayor Voss responded to some, people who wrote in saying, why are we so quick to dismiss a mail-in election ballot election? And Mayor Voss' response was, well, that can disenfranchise some voters. Well, doesn't 4 city council members who don't live in District 1 deciding who their representative disenfranchise all of District 1?
Right. Yeah.
There was some concern, I think, about, well, if we wait until we can have a special election, it might be, I think I've heard May for a mail-in election and November for an actual, on the ballot election. Doesn't that leave District 1 without representation for that time? Well, Councilmember Pepin said in his resignation letter, I will stay until a replacement has been selected. So that's not necessarily an issue, unless he's saying, look, guys, I'm not staying until November. So there are kind of these vague reasons put out there for why an appointment was the only, best solution for them. But it doesn't sound like any of those are really genuine reasons.
Yeah. There's again, a lot of different angles to this, because